Hello, dear friends, and welcome to our channel. We hope this message finds you in good health and high spirits. As you join us today, we invite you to set aside all your worries and leave your troubles behind. Take a deep breath, relax, and get comfortable as we embark on a journey through stories that will warm your heart and spark your imagination. Let's dive into a world where every tale brings a little more joy and peace to your day. Story, Vabe and the Wolf's Tale. Chapter 1. The Village of Lumeria. Nestled within the gentle slopes of the Blue Mountain Range was the quaint village of Lumeria. Surrounded by lush meadows and deep forests, Lumeria was a place where time seemed to stand still. The villagers lived in harmony with nature, their lives dictated by the seasons and the rhythm of the land. In this village, everyone had a role to play, from the blacksmith who forged tools to the farmers who tilled the soil. Among them was a young boy named Vabe. Vabe was the son of a shepherd, and like his father before him, he was entrusted with the care of the village's flock. Every morning, Vabe would guide the sheep up the grassy hills, where they would graze under the watchful eyes of the mountains. From dawn until dusk, he sat on a large rock at the edge of the pasture, a wooden flute in his hand and a daydream in his heart. Unlike the other boys in the village, who were content with their simple lives, Vabe had a wild imagination. His mind was a treasure trove of stories, filled with heroic knights, fearsome dragons, and distant lands waiting to be explored. But in the quiet village of Lumeria, there was little room for such grand adventures. The only danger was the occasional wolf that would wander too close to the flock, but even that was rare. The villagers were vigilant, and the wolves had long since learned to avoid the sharp spears and quick arrows of the shepherds. Yet, Vabe longed for excitement. The monotony of his daily routine weighed heavily on him, and he often found himself lost in fantasy. As he watched over the sheep, he would imagine himself as a brave warrior, defending the flock from a pack of ravenous wolves or a cunning thief. He yearned for a chance to prove himself, to show the villagers that he was more than just a boy with his head in the clouds. Chapter 2. First Cry. One warm summer afternoon, as Vabe lay under the shade of a tall oak tree, he was struck by an idea. His eyes gleamed with mischief as he sat up, a playful smile spreading across his face. What if he could create his own adventure? What if, just for a moment, he could bring one of his stories to life? Thought thrilled him, and before he could second-guess himself, Vabe sprang to his feet. He ran to the top of the hill and, cupping his hands around his mouth, shouted at the top of his lungs, "Wolf! Wolf! A wolf is attacking the sheep!" His voice echoed across the valley, reaching the ears of the villagers below. The response was immediate. The farmers dropped their tools, the blacksmith abandoned his forge, and even the old village elder grabbed his staff and hurried up the hill. The men came armed with spears and pitchforks, their faces set in grim determination. But when they arrived at the pasture, they found only Vabe standing among the sheep, a wide grin on his face. There was no wolf in sight. "Vabe!" cried the village elder, his voice a mixture of relief and frustration. "Where is the wolf?" Vabe chuckled, his laughter ringing out in the still air. "There is no wolf," he said, his eyes twinkling with mischief. "I was just having some fun." The villagers stared at him in disbelief, their anger slowly rising. "Do you think this is a game?" one of the farmers demanded. "We left our work because we thought you were in danger." "You shouldn't lie about such things, Vabe," the blacksmith added, his voice stern. "Wolves are no laughing matter." Vabe's smile faded as he saw the disappointment in their eyes. The elder stepped forward, placing a hand on the boy's shoulder. "Vabe, you must understand," said gently. "Lying is like crying out for rain when the sun is shining. It may bring a moment's thrill, but it leaves behind only a dry and barren field." Vabe nodded, feeling a pang of guilt in his chest. The villagers returned to their work, leaving Vabe alone with his thoughts. He had wanted excitement, but now he was left with a sour taste in his mouth. Still, as the sun dipped below the horizon, the memory of the villagers rushing to his aid brought a smile to his face. It had been thrilling to see them so worried, even if just for a moment. Chapter 3. The Second Cry. Days passed, and Vub tried to focus on his duties. The memory of his prank lingered in his mind. He had tasted the thrill of adventure, and it left him craving more. The monotony of his daily routine became even harder to bear, and soon, urge to cry wolf again became too strong to resist. One afternoon, as Vube watched the sheep graze, felt the familiar itch of boredom. The sun was high in the sky, and the village below was quiet and peaceful. Vabe stood up, his heart pounding with anticipation, and ran to the top of the hill. "Wolf! Wolf! A wolf is attacking the sheep!" he shouted, voice echoing through the valley. Once again, the villagers came running, armed and ready to defend the flock. But when they reached the pasture, they found Vabe standing there with a mischievous grin on his face. "There is no wolf," Vabe said, laughing at the look of exasperation on their faces. "I was just playing a joke." This time, the villagers were not amused. The elder's face was stern as he approached Vabe. "Vabe, this is the second time you've lied to us," he said, his voice heavy with disappointment. "Do you not understand the consequences of your actions?" Vabe shrugged, still smiling. "Just a bit of fun," he said. "No harm done." The elder sighed, his eyes full of concern. "Lies are like seeds," Vabe said. "They may seem harmless at first, but if left to grow, they can choke the truth and destroy the trust that binds us together. If you continue down this path, there will be a price to pay." Vabe nodded, but the words of the elder did little to dampen his spirits. The thrill of the villagers rushing to his aid was too intoxicating, and he found himself grinning at the memory even as they walked away. But deep down, a small voice of doubt began to whisper in his mind, warning him that the elder's words were not to be taken lightly. Chapter 4. Real Danger. Autumn arrived, and with it came a chill in the air. The leaves turned golden and red, and the days grew shorter. Babe continued his duties as a shepherd, but the thrill of his pranks had begun to wear off. The villagers were no longer quick to respond to his calls, and the excitement he once felt was fading. One crisp morning, as Vabe led the flock up the hill, he noticed something unusual. The air was still, and the forest at the edge of the pasture seemed eerily quiet. Vabe felt a shiver run down his spine, but he shook it off, convincing himself that it was just the cold. As the day wore on, Vabe's unease grew. Sheep were restless, their ears twitching and their eyes darting toward the trees. Vabe tried to ignore it, but a nagging feeling in his gut told him that something was wrong. And then, as the sun began to set, Vabe saw it, a shadow moving among the trees. His heart skipped a beat as he realized what it was. A nymph, larger and more fearsome than any he had ever imagined, was creeping toward the flock. Panic surged through Vabe's veins as he grabbed his staff and ran to the top of the hill. "Wolf! Wolf!" cried, his voice trembling with fear. "A wolf is attacking the sheep. Please help." But this time, there was no rush of footsteps, no villagers coming to his aid. Vabe's cries echoed through the valley, but the only response was the howling of the wind. The boy's heart sank as he realized the terrible truth. No one was coming. The villagers had grown weary of his lies and no longer believed him. Desperation took hold as Vabe ran back to the pasture, eyes wide with terror. The wolf was closing in on the sheep, its eyes gleaming with hunger. Vabe's mind raced as he tried to think of a way to save the flock, but his body was frozen with fear. Just as the wolf pounced, a loud crack split the air. An arrow whizzed past Vabe's head, striking the wolf in the shoulder. The beast let out a yelp of pain and turned to flee, disappearing into the forest as quickly as it had appeared. Vabe turned to see the village elder standing at the edge of the pasture, his bow still raised. The old man's face was stern as he approached Vabe, his eyes filled with a mix of relief and disappointment. "You should be grateful that I was nearby, Vabe," the elder said, lowering his bow. "But make no mistake, fault is yours. Your lies have cost you the trust of the village, and it nearly cost..."